Mark and Elena had been married for 5 years. Their marriage seemed ideal, based on trust and love. They lived in a council house in the suburbs, and their life was stable and calm. Elena had a twin sister, Victoria, whose existence Mark did not even know about. Victoria lived abroad and rarely visited her homeland, so Elena did not think it necessary to tell her husband about her. One day, Elena decided to invite Victoria to stay with them for a few weeks. Victoria had just finished an important project at work and needed a rest, and Elena was happy to spend time with her sister. They had not seen each other for a long time, and Elena was looking forward to the joy of meeting. Victoria arrived early in the morning. When Mark had already left for work, Elena met her at the door with hugs and joyful exclamations. The sisters immediately plunged into conversation, discussing the latest news and sharing stories from their lives. "How I missed you, Nika," Elena said, pouring her sister a cup of tea. "We've missed so much during this time." "Me too, Lenica," Victoria replied, smiling, "but now we have time to catch up." The sisters spent the whole day together, enjoying each other's company. They walked around the city, visited their favorite cafes, and reminisced about their childhood. Elena decided not to bother Mark with calls and messages, so as not to distract him from work. She was going to tell him about her sister's visit that evening over dinner. Victoria was amazed at the coziness and beauty of Elena and Mark's house. "You have such a beautiful place here," she said, looking around the living room. "You really made it cozy." "Thank you, Nika. Mark and I worked hard on this," Elena replied, smiling proudly. "He will be glad to meet you." Victoria decided to spend some time alone to relax after a long journey. She went up to the guest room and started unpacking. Elena left her sister and went to the kitchen to cook dinner. When Mark returned home in the evening, he was greeted by a delicious smell from the kitchen. He was tired after a long day at work, but happy to return to his cozy home. "Hello, love," Mark said, entering the kitchen and kissing Elena. "How was your day?" "Hello, Mark. It was a wonderful day," Elena replied, smiling. "I have a surprise for you." "A surprise?" Mark was surprised. "What kind of surprise?" Before Elena could answer, Victoria entered the living room. She was dressed in the pajamas that Elena had given her for comfort. Mark stopped and frowned, looking in surprise at the woman who looked exactly like his wife. "Mark, this is my sister Victoria," Elena said, walking up to Victoria and wrapping her arm around her shoulders. "She's going to be staying with us for a while." Mark was stunned. "A twin sister," he repeated, trying to process what he had seen. "Why didn't you ever tell me about her?" "I just didn't think it was that important," Elena replied, smiling sheepishly. "Victoria doesn't come here often, so I thought I'd tell you when she was here." Mark nodded, trying to get used to the idea of having a twin sister. "It's nice to meet you, Victoria," he said, extending his hand. "Welcome to our home." Victoria smiled and shook his hand. "Thank you, Mark. It's nice to finally meet you." They spent the evening over dinner, talking and laughing. Mark was beginning to get used to Victoria's presence and enjoying the time he had with his family. However, an unexpected and shocking discovery was waiting for them, which would turn their lives upside down. A few days passed after Victoria's arrival, and life in the house continued as usual. Mark began to get used to the presence of his wife's twin sister, although he sometimes got confused when seeing them together. Victoria decided to use the time visiting to relax a little and see her old friends. One afternoon, when Mark was at work, Victoria met her old acquaintance Andrew, whom they had not seen for many years. Andrew was an attractive and charismatic man, and a spark immediately arose between them. They agreed to meet in the evening, when Elena and Mark would be busy with their own affairs. Victoria invited Andrew into the house, knowing that Elena had gone shopping and should not return soon. They sat her day in the living room, laughing and reminiscing about old times. The atmosphere became more and more intimate, and soon they moved to the bedroom. At this time, Mark unexpectedly returned home early, deciding to surprise his wife. As he approached the house, He noticed that the light was on in the bedroom windows. He carefully approached and heard sounds coming from inside. Opening the door, he saw a scene that struck him to the depths of his soul. Victoria was making love to Andre. Mark did not know that it was Victoria and mistook her for Elena. In rage and despair, he did not explain anything. He left the house, ignoring Victoria's screams, who was trying to explain something. Mark did not want to listen to anything. He went to the nearest bar, where he began to drink, trying to drown out the pain and resentment. In the bar, Mark met his old friend Sergei, who noticed his depressed state. "Mark, what happened?" Sergei asked, sitting down next to him. Mark, under the influence of alcohol, told him everything that had happened. Sergei suggested that he go to a brothel to distract himself and forget about the problems, succumbing to persuasion and the influence of alcohol. Mark agreed. The night passed in drunken stupor and betrayal, which he would later bitterly regret. Elena returned home when Mark was gone. She found Victoria in tears and learned everything that had happened. Victoria told her about the misunderstanding and that Mark had mistaken her for Elena. Elena was shocked, but decided to wait for her husband to return to explain everything. The next day, Elena discovered that Mark had not returned home all night. She decided to go to the priest they trusted for support and wise advice. The priest listened carefully and suggested that they talk to Mark together to try to restore peace in the family. When Mark finally returned, he was tired and depressed. Elena was waiting for him on the doorstep. "Mark, we need to have a serious talk," she said quietly but firmly. "You need to know the truth." They sat her down in the living room, and Elena began to tell everything she had learned from Victoria. She explained that Mark had not seen her, but Victoria with her friend Andre. Mark, hesitant at first, began to realize that his hurt and anger had been directed at the wrong person. "It wasn't me, Mark," Elena said, her voice shaking. "It was Victoria. You saw her, not me. She tried to explain to you, but you wouldn't listen." Mark sat there with his head down, realizing his mistake. "Why didn't you tell me about Victoria before?" he asked quietly. "I didn't think it would be important," Elena replied. "She rarely comes, and I didn't want to bother you, but now I realize it was a mistake." Elena continued her story, trying not to miss a single detail. "When you left, Victoria was in shock. She was crying and trying to call you, but you didn't answer. I came back and saw her like that, and she told me everything." Mark felt worse and worse. He realized that he had acted rashly and made a terrible mistake. "I was so angry," he admitted. "I didn't know what to do. I went to a bar and drank too much." Elena listened attentively, without interrupting. "And what happened next?" Sergei suggested going to a brothel. Mark continued with difficulty. "I didn't want to, but I was too drunk to resist. I made a mistake. I cheated on you. I'm so sorry, Elena. I didn't know what to do." Elena closed her eyes, trying to cope with her emotions. "Do you understand what this means, Mark? Not only did you not trust me, but you cheated on me. How can we continue to live together after this?" Mark tried to find the words to justify himself, but he understood that he could not fix anything. "I love you, Elena. I made a terrible mistake, but I am ready to do everything to regain your trust." Despite Mark's explanations and apologies, Elena realized that she could not forgive his betrayal. She felt that their relationship would no longer be the same, and the trust was finally lost. "Mark, I appreciate your sincerity, but I can't live with what happened," she said, her voice firm but sad. "Our family was built on trust, and now it's gone." Mark was silent, realizing that he had lost the most precious thing in his life. Elena packed her things and went to her friends, leaving Mark in their empty house. He was left alone, regretting his actions and realizing that he could not return anything. So the story that began with a misunderstanding and a simple visit from her sister ended with the destruction of the family and the loss of love. Elena found the strength to move on, and Mark was left alone, realizing his mistakes and trying to find a way to fix his life.